Hello, how you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. I hope staying warm out there. Well, I have a little short segment of video on what's going on in today's America when it comes to segregation, and there's a story on it. Here's the video.
Baltimore City Health Department separated its staff by race for a series of equity trainings, leading to questions about the ethics and legality of segregated meetings.
Patrick Hunt from our Spotlight on Maryland team has details. They erred on the wrong side. You don't segregate people.
It's a waste of time and money.
I don't think this is what Thurgood Marshall or the pioneers of the civil rights era had in mind.
Spotlight on Maryland obtained documents in a public information request that revealed the Baltimore City Health Department spent roughly 50,000 taxpayer dollars from 2022 to 2024 for racial equity trainings provided by an organization called the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, a group that one employee of the Baltimore City Office of Civil Rights described in an email as OG radical organizers. The People's Institute helped the Baltimore City Health Department establish segregated groups for its employees to discuss racial equity in health. The groups were labeled as the White Caucus and People of Color Caucus. One document from 2023 shows BCHD organized these meetings monthly and defined the White Caucus as a group of white people who meet for the purpose of building analysis, awareness, stamina, and strategy to challenge systemic racism and internalized white supremacy. White affinity groups allow us to examine our racial conditioning without relying on people of color for answers or subjecting them to our process. Meeting attendance was described as voluntary but highly recommended.
I grew up in East Baltimore. Segregation, I'm the last generation that really experienced segregation.
That's Pastor P.M. Smith, a Baltimore City native who preaches at Huber Memorial Church and as a lawyer practiced criminal law in Maryland. He said overcoming racial prejudice takes a group effort focused on individual responsibility.
And they assume that folk come in with these biases. Okay, fine. How can we change it if you continue to isolate and segregate yourself? Are we going backwards? No. You change it by bringing people in contact with each other.
I would have not comprised a training in such a manner.
That's Chad Lassiter, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, which is the state's top civil rights enforcement agency. Lassiter said his approach to racial equity training is more collaborative and empathetic.
And what we do is we construct it in a way where it doesn't become divisive, where whites are not leaving there feeling beat up by white guilt, but also we're talking about accurate history as well.
Through Vignaraja, the former Maryland Deputy Attorney General, said the practice of segregated diversity meetings could face legal challenges.
The Supreme Court has always said that diversity is a valuable goal, whether it's in higher education or law school education. Those are valuable goals. But the Supreme Court has also said how you get to those goals matters. And you can't use methods like separating people into white rooms and people of color rooms.
We reached out to the Baltimore City Health Department with the following questions and did not receive a response despite moving our deadline more than a week. Why did BCHD decide to segregate into separate groups for white people and people of color for discussions about racial equity? Are these meetings and trainings ongoing? Vignaraja said the City Health Department owes taxpayers an answer.
You don't get to just separate people by color under the pretext of pursuing diversity and then stonewall when the public comes asking questions and expecting answers.
Emails show the White Caucus meeting continued into at least June 2025, with discussions of another payment to the People's Institute that year. One resource provided by the Baltimore City Health Department to leaders of the caucuses emphasized the benefits of separating groups by race, stating that working in multiracial groups is difficult, not because the group is difficult, but because white supremacy is a systemic sickness.
I think it has the potential to go off the rails.
Lassiter said the Baltimore City Health Department should ditch its segregated approach.
I think that it further divides us, and you run the risk in this moment because, we're seduced into divisions. And so this could further not just alienate people, but lead to a form of trauma as well.
A spokeswoman for the People's Institute defended its collaboration with the Baltimore City Health Department on the racial caucuses, what she referred to as affinity spaces, with claims they have been shown to increase employee engagement and retention. Research on affinity groups demonstrates that members feel more supported by colleagues after participating. These groups create opportunities to share ideas and offer feedback in smaller spaces, which then improves the quality of dialogue and problem solving across the department, the spokeswoman told us. We read the statement to Pastor Smith, who was unconvinced. Does that make sense to you?
I don't even understand what you just said. But do you understand what you just said?
Not quite.
It's gook, man. It's nyah.
Lassiter similarly dismissed the statement.
I would caution against an affinity space that is trying to bring a message forth for really difficult conversations to have it along the continuum of segregation.
For Spotlight on Maryland, I'm Patrick Hupp.
So when America says that, oh, that's just in the past. That's just in the past. Why do you black people keep bringing it up?
Imagine waking up one day to find that your
Oh
name,
my goodness.
your home, your family, everything that defined who you are has been taken from you. This was the reality for millions of black people during European colonization and the transatlantic slave trade. Entire communities were uprooted, cultures suppressed, and identities erased, leaving scars that span generations. Families were torn apart, lands confiscated, and a people who once thrived on their own soil were forced into lives of unimaginable hardship and control. But this story is not just about the past, it echoes through time, shaping the very structures of society we see today. From neighborhoods segregated by law to the economic and educational barriers that still persist, the impact of this history continues to ripple across generations. The struggle is real, the pain is inherited, and the resilience is undeniable. In this video, we will uncover the untold truths of how systemic forces intentionally disrupted black communities. From historical injustices to modern-day inequities, we will explore stories of survival, resistance, and the ongoing fight for justice and equality. You will see how courage, perseverance, and community have been the backbone of a people who refuse to be erased. So if you are ready to dive deep into history, understand the roots of systemic challenges, and witness the power of resilience, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. This is more than a story, it is a journey through time, a call to awareness, and a reminder that understanding the past is the first step toward shaping a fairer future. Welcome to a story that the world needs to hear. Let us begin. As the 20th century dawned, the promise of freedom for black Americans remained painfully incomplete. Though the chains of slavery had been legally broken, a new form of confinement emerged, invisible yet no less binding. In cities across the United States, policies carefully crafted by government officials and reinforced by local authorities began to shape the very landscape of opportunity, steering black families into concentrated areas of poverty while closing doors to wealth and stability. Redlining, a practice in which banks and mortgage lenders drew literal red lines around neighborhoods deemed undesirable for home loans, systematically prevented black families from purchasing homes in more affluent, predominantly white areas. These maps, developed under the guidance of federal agencies like the Homeowners Loan Corporation, became instruments of exclusion, condemning entire communities to underinvestment and neglect. But redlining was only one layer of a complex web of restrictions, racially restrictive covenants, legal agreements embedded into property deeds, explicitly prohibited black families from buying or even renting homes in certain neighborhoods. These covenants, enforced by courts and backed by the authority of local governments, ensured that wealth accumulation through property ownership, a cornerstone of the American dream, remained largely out of reach. Black families who sought to move into better neighborhoods faced not only legal barriers, but also social intimidation and orchestrated hostility from white residents determined to maintain racial hierarchies. These restrictions did not just limit housing choices, they dictated the quality of education, the accessibility of healthcare, and the potential for economic mobility for generations to come. Neighborhoods designated for black residents were often starved of resources, with schools underfunded, streets poorly maintained, and community services lacking, while adjacent white neighborhoods flourished. The impact was cumulative. Children growing up in these environments faced overcrowded classrooms, outdated textbooks, and limited extracurricular opportunities, shaping educational outcomes that would influence employment prospects for decades. Black entrepreneurs, too, were constrained, unable to secure loans or expand businesses in areas where prosperity was possible, leaving entire communities economically marginalized despite the resilience and ingenuity of their residents. This orchestrated segregation created pockets of concentrated poverty, reinforcing stereotypes and perpetuating cycles of disadvantage. Wealth and opportunity, available to white Americans as a matter of systemic design, were systematically withheld from black communities. As families struggled to build security and pass down assets, they faced obstacles that were not accidental but deliberately engineered. Generations were left navigating a landscape where doors to better housing, safer neighborhoods, and quality schools were closed, while punitive policies and social hostility ensured that climbing out of these imposed confines required extraordinary determination and solidarity. Yet, amidst these structural constraints, black communities found ways to survive, adapt, and resist. Churches, social clubs, and informal networks became centers of support, teaching resilience, resourcefulness, and collective empowerment. Even in the face of housing segregation and economic deprivation, families maintained cultural traditions, nurtured education where possible, and created spaces for self-expression and growth. These efforts did not erase the harm caused by redlining and restrictive covenants, but they reveal the enduring strength and perseverance of black Americans confronting an oppressive system designed to suppress their progress. By understanding the deliberate nature of these policies, it becomes clear that the segregation of neighborhoods was not a byproduct of chance or personal choice, but a calculated strategy to contain black populations and maintain inequality. The legacy of these practices endures today, visible in the disparities of wealth, health, and opportunity that persist across communities. A reminder that freedom without equity can be incomplete, and that the structural barriers erected decades ago continue to shape lives in profound ways. Even as black communities navigated the harsh landscapes of segregated neighborhoods and underfunded schools, another invisible barrier emerged, one that struck not at property or income but at voice and agency. From the earliest days of Reconstruction through the modern era, every attempt by black Americans to assert their political rights, express grievances, or demand justice was met with a combination of censorship, intimidation, and carefully constructed structural obstacles. Voting, a fundamental right on paper, became a minefield of discriminatory practices. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and complex registration procedures were enforced selectively to suppress black participation, ensuring that political power remained in the hands of those invested in maintaining white dominance. When courageous individuals dared to challenge these systems, the response was often swift and brutal, ranging from public shaming and job termination to threats of violence and, in extreme cases, lynching, sending a chilling message to entire communities that speaking out came at an unthinkable cost. Beyond the ballot box, the act of simply being heard presented its own challenges. Black activists, writers, and leaders faced media gatekeeping that limited their reach, while community organizing was frequently infiltrated or undermined by law enforcement and government agencies. Programs like COINTELPRO, officially aimed at monitoring extremist activity, in practice targeted civil rights organizations and leaders, planting informants, spreading disinformation, and even facilitating the destruction of lives through arrests or assassinations. Each silenced voice was a calculated effort to fracture collective strength, to instill fear, and to make the struggle for justice appear unattainable. The messages of leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, and countless unsung activists were often distorted or ignored, and the communities they fought for were left to navigate a society that made resistance seem perilous and isolated. Even in more contemporary contexts, the echoes of these suppressive tactics remain. Black protesters advocating for equitable treatment face disproportionate scrutiny, whether through heightened policing, biased social media algorithms, or public narratives that question their motives while amplifying dissenting criticism. Those who use their platforms to expose inequities risk harassment, doxing, or professional repercussions, creating a climate where speaking truth to power requires extraordinary courage. The cumulative effect is not only the limitation of individual voices, but the shaping of public perception, often presenting the struggles of black communities as isolated incidents rather than systemic issues requiring comprehensive attention. Despite these formidable barriers, black expression has endured, evolving with each generation. Music, literature, art, and social media have become vehicles for resistance. Documenting experiences, celebrating cultural identity, and mobilizing communities. Each act of expression, whether a protest song, a voter registration drive, or a public speech, serves as both defiance and preservation, keeping alive the narratives that dominant systems have long attempted to suppress. It is in the continued assertion of these voices that history is challenged, policies are questioned, and the framework of injustice is exposed. The legacy of silencing may be long, but it has never been absolute.
Now I'm going to show you what's going on with today and what's happening because of this video, what he's talking about. Let's go with Virtual O'Brien. Shout out to his channel.
Bills are rising faster than paychecks, neighborhoods are changing overnight, and entire black communities are quietly disappearing from the places they once built from nothing. This isn't rumor. It's showing up in U.S. demographics, migration trends, and black population data that most media outlets refuse to connect. Welcome to 10 states where black Americans are quietly leaving. An investigative breakdown from Virtual Travel by Brian, exposing the modern black exodus from U.S. states driven by social issues, state policies, and collapsing quality of life. This countdown reveals why black Americans leaving states isn't just about moving. It's about survival, safety, and financial reality. Stay locked in as we follow the numbers, the money, and the pressure reshaping black migration in America. Hit like, subscribe, and watch this countdown to the end, because the truth is hiding in plain sight. Number 10. Washington, D.C. Welcome to Washington, D.C., the nation's political heartbeat, home of monuments, museums, and apparently rising rents so steep that even Lincoln's hat looks cheap by comparison. Now, before you gasp at that comparison, let's get this straight. The city that once had a black majority is now watching its black population shrink like an ice cube in July. Yep, the very place that historically stood as a symbol of black political power and pride has become one of the clearest examples of how gentrification and skyrocketing living costs can rearrange an entire community. Back in 2000, black residents made up roughly 60% of DC's population. Fast forward 20 years, and that share plunged into the 40s, and in some wards, way lower. What's going on? Is it a secret eviction plot signed by every politician? Not exactly. It's just capitalism doing its thing, with a cherry on top called luxury condos. Let's break this down. Young professionals flood the city for jobs in tech, lobbying, and whatever the heck consulting really means. Demand surges. Landlords smell profit. Rents and home prices shoot up faster than you can say $5 avocado toast. And guess who feels it first? Longtime residents who suddenly find they're squeezed out of neighborhoods that used to feel like home. Ward maps from 2010 to 2020 tell it visually. Blocks that were once majority black turned into mosaic patterns of new development. Some longtime residents call it progress, others call it a slow erasure. As one DC native put it in a local interview, "I don't recognize the streets I grew up on. Every new building feels like another piece of my story that doesn't belong to me anymore." And he's not alone. Neighborhood staples, barbershops, family diners, black-owned bookstores are replaced by chic coffee bars with names too pretentious to pronounce. Meanwhile, data shows that many black families are relocating to more affordable areas outside the city, and some are even leaving the region completely. Critics of gentrification note that rising property taxes and increased cost of living have turned what was once a uniquely black urban landscape into something that caters almost exclusively to those with deeper pockets. That's not a conspiracy. That's supply and demand, with a side of good luck affording daycare. But here's the irony. DC still brands itself as a hub of black history, culture, and political identity. You've got the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture drawing crowds from around the world, while everyday black Washingtonians quietly question whether they can afford to stay. So as we kick off this countdown, DC sits at number 10, not because the issues started here, but because here they are most visible. A vivid snapshot of how economics, policy, and urban revitalization can push out the very communities that made a place rich in the first place. Number 9, Louisiana. New Orleans loves to sell itself as the soul of Black America. Jazz, food, second lines, and a cultural swagger that can't be copied. But behind the beads and brass bands sits a colder truth. Black New Orleans has been shrinking for 2 decades, and it didn't start yesterday. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 wasn't just a storm, it was a demographic reset button. Before Katrina, New Orleans was about 67% black. After the floodwaters receded and the bulldozers rolled in, tens of thousands of black residents never returned. By 2020, the city's black share had dropped into the high 50s. That might sound small, but in a city that used to be the black cultural capital of the South, it's seismic. As former Mayor Ray Nagin once said, New Orleans will be a majority African American city. That was the promise. What happened instead was something closer to a slow-motion eviction. Rebuilding money poured in, but it didn't flow evenly. Whole black neighborhoods were redeveloped with higher rents, short-term rentals, and shiny condos aimed at newcomers with remote jobs and Silicon Valley salaries. Meanwhile, longtime residents faced insurance hikes, property taxes, and landlords suddenly realizing their shotgun houses were now boutique properties. One New Orleans resident told a local reporter, "Katrina didn't just wash us out, it priced us out." And that line hits harder than a Category 5 storm. Crime and infrastructure didn't help either. Families already dealing with higher rent were also facing unreliable schools, rising insurance costs, and uneven policing. So they did what people do when a place becomes too expensive and too stressful. They left. Some moved to nearby parishes. Others went to entirely different states where their dollar could breathe again. Here's the sarcastic twist. The city still markets itself as black, while quietly becoming less black. Tourists flood Bourbon Street to consume authentic culture, even as the people who created that culture struggle to afford to live anywhere near it. New Orleans is now a case study in what happens when disaster meets development. Katrina cleared the land, gentrification claimed the profit, and black residents were left negotiating whether to stay in a city that loves their history but keeps selling their future. So Louisiana lands at number 9, not because black people stopped loving New Orleans, but because New Orleans stopped loving them back in practical ways. Culture doesn't pay the rent, nostalgia doesn't cover property taxes, and resilience doesn't fix a housing market designed to reward outsiders. As we move deeper into this countdown, you'll see this pattern repeat. When the cost of staying exceeds the value of belonging, people pack up quietly. And trust me, New Orleans is just the beginning.
Favorite side hustle for 2024? So there's this paper flipping.
Reason for making this video, you can go to see the rest of his countdown, is because, you know, when it comes to black people bringing issues like this, you know, you have some people, white people and others, will sit up there and say, no, you guys are blowing this thing out. No, it's reverse discrimination. No, it's stuff of the past. And you had convinced some black people thinking it's the past. But they didn't have the understanding of what is in the present. They don't understand that how the way racism always said this in the past, it transformed. It wasn't always direct. Now it's transforming by so-called policies and politics and certain demographics of politicians. And they will use people that look like this to get their point. That will cause many of their own people that look like this to fall. They play both sides of the field. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. They two wings on the same bird. And this is how they do it. This is how they play the black community throughout America. And the Black Caucus knows about this. Black mayors, they know all about this. They know. So they're just equally responsible. They sell out just like, we accuse some African leaders of selling out. Just for different reasons. They know what the reasons is. Just for their so-called legacy. And then when you have an organization, or all the way up to the president, is showing you they behind. And they take stuff away from you to literally wipe you up and then put you up under separation and segregation. This is why some black people have left the United States. This is why. Because America still don't want to let something go from the past. But when the very people that put it on, one of the main groups of people is black people, raising the cane about this. Oh, it's of the past. Oh, they play the mind trick game. So now you see in from a news channel saying it's in Baltimore, Virtual O'Brien is showing you, go to his channel and he'll show you more and the history of it. But they tell black people, why don't you let the past go? How can you let the past go when you're still seeing it in the present? Racist, it's better now than it was back then. Look where it's heading. Nothing's new. There's a word, and I believe it's in the Bible, nothing's new up under the sun. But in my version, it just transformed. They want to keep black people back at the totem pole, down at the bottom. This is what this current administration, any policies have done throughout the United States. Let's use them as value, as entertainment. We'll take a portion of them for our own gain and good and keep the rest of them subjugated. That's what it is. So when the ones who choose to do right, don't matter if you choose to do right, it's just that they have to eliminate you. Eliminate you, your existence, your seed, and everything about you. But the devil is a lie. Because when I said on the video, the Most High ain't gonna let that happen. They think that they see one thing Christian white nationalists don't understand. God understands Christian white nationalists' motive because he's seen it for centuries. And whether they try to call themselves to try to witchcraft it into other people's face, it's gonna come back and smack them in the face. What your intentions are doing, it's not gonna work. You can't subjugate people for another 200 years and think that now the consequence is going to fall against them. They only feel like they got so much leeway, but the curse is coming upon them. They're not producing children. And they trying to blame another race for because they have to blend in other races. And this subjugate, it bothers people like Donald Trump and other people who think like him. It really does. What you see, that's what it is. So now they have to put in a policy. He put his own administration in with like-minded people. And you can see by their actions. But what they don't understand, it's not going to work. Everything that the Most High God, whatever the white man at the high level of his income, his status, is coming down. No matter what he does, it's going to fall back on him. No matter what kind of trickery he does, it's going to fall back on him. Because it's falling back on him as we speak. And even people who look like him know that what he's doing is not right with this stuff. So it pushes some black people say, okay, you want to go back to segregation, then don't stop preventing us from doing what we naturally do. And black people probably, if they do want to be segregated, is that put in a crime bill in reparations. Let the ones who will do the right thing and fulfill what they need to do for their community. But they won't let that happen. So the Most High is going to bring it. All we got to do is pray and speak it, and the Most High bring it. It don't matter if they don't like it. Justice is, I bet you men prior before that didn't think that the people that they oppressed in each centuries throughout the history of the planet thought they can keep doing this for time and time and pass it down from generation after generation. And what happened? I heard Andre Love, Klaus and Boris bring this up. Every civilization fall. America's going to fall. America has so much blood and injustice on her hands. And she's trying to cover and dabble and do like similar situation like they done in Egypt. Just because you got the children of the Most High on the land think that the land's going to be blessed and they can worship all the gods and have all the military and have all the things and keep practicing oppression like they have done, like other civilizations have done other people. But what you don't understand, every day has a day of reckoning. You can't just get away just because I'm white and I say so. We can control the narrative. That's over anymore. Because the first shall be last and last shall be first. And we see it's going to rise during the time of this is the Jacob season. So they can't stop it. You can't. Who you gonna stop? You can't stop the floods. You can't stop the pestilence. You can't stop because you're white and you say so. Because you're paying. You can try it, but you can't control the elements that you can't stop for people. God gonna put a people in a place. Ain't not a darn thing they can do. If a people gonna get justice, see, they're not riding against us black people. They rise against the one that created all of us as a human race. And they think that he has to show them their mindsets like he showed them centuries before. You ain't controlling nothing. Because whatever is unjust in the land is going to be just by the Most High God towards his people. And black people, just like many of his people, are going to get justice on the shore. And America's going to pay. Oh, she going to pay. One way or the other. It don't have to be. It's going to wish how she paid. And if the people who call themselves Christians, and you read your Bible, read a story about the Egyptians. Because they thought they could do the same thing. But unfortunately, they thought, and when the plagues came, because the people cried out, and even though God allowed that Pharaoh to harden his heart, what happened? What happened? The plagues came, right? And the leaders of that time, with all the military might, with all their position and hierarchy in government, could not do a darn thing. They have magicians that see if they can counteract. They would go out to pray to their gods, and their gods wasn't answering. What I'm saying, white nationalists, Christian nationalists, your kingdom is coming down. What your perception of Christ is coming down. Caesar Borgia, not Jesus from the Word. Take care, be blessed, y'all. See y'all next video. Like and subscribe. That's the truth.